This meeting is being recorded.
Got it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Donna Kane, and I'm the chair for TTN Ohio. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. We have a fabulous evening prepared for you. Our writers group is going to be presenting their 4-word piece. And then after that, we have a special like half-hour video of the trip that Mara and Pat and many others in TTN took on the civil rights trip. And they'll be explaining that after this presentation. I wanted to remind you that our holiday party is coming up. Susie just sent it out, so don't forget to sign up. And all the directions are in the email. This year we're donating, if you so choose, to the Girl Scouts of Ohio's Heartland. And you can bring a check if you like, or do it online. What else? I think that's it, right? So Susie, who's first? Roberta? Okay, are we ready to start? Perfect. Thank you,
I'm
Roberta.
ready. I'm introducing the program. The reason we chose 4 words as our title for this evening's presentation is because I got a Facebook Messenger text from my ex, and it was 4 words. And I thought, how am I going to answer him? What am I going to say? What do I say? So I thought, well, it's just 4 words. And I started writing, and this is what I wrote. And then everyone else did their own variation on what 4 words means to them. So title is, it's just 4 words. 4 words. I should ask, can everyone hear me? Nod your head. Yes. Okay, good. Because I'm covering you up with my writing here. 4 words. It's just 4 words. 4 words. How dare you intrude? 4 words. How dare you, period. 4 words that have no meaning. 4 words that say so much. 4 words that say so little. 4 words that show your insanity. 4 words, you have no life. 4 words, you must be unhappy. 4 words, are you that lonely? 4 words, you miss the fantasy. 4 words, it's just your fantasy. 4 words, the fantasy doesn't exist. 4 words, I'm not the same. 4 words, I've grown and changed. 4 words, I'm a different person. 4 words, I have boundaries now. 4 words, my boundaries surround me. 4 words, my boundaries comfort me. 4 words, boundaries are my achievement. 4 words, I have a life. 4 words, I love my life. 4 words, I am safe now. 4 words, I have peace now. 4 words, I love my friends. 4 words, I love my dog. Your 4 words, I do miss you. My 4 words, I don't miss you. The end. Thank you. Thank you. And the next person up is
Allison.
Allison,
Yeah,
with the face of homelessness, and my brain doesn't work. So Allison, if you're there, take it away.
yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So the first one is my brain doesn't work. It's just 4 words. 4 words, my brain doesn't work. 4 words, I can't recall memories. 4 words, I can't recall words. 4 words, my brain is foggy. 4 words, I want to sleep. 4 words, why am I trapped? 4 words, help me get out. 4 words, help me break free. 4 words, I can see you. 4 words, I can hear you. 4 words, I can't communicate thoughts. 4 words, I am in here. 4 words, I can't think clearly. 4 words, is my brain processing? 4 words, I feel so lost. 4 words, I feel so scared. 4 words, I feel so disconnected. 4 words, I feel so sad. 4 words, please fix my brain. Your 4 words, please soften my anger. My 4 words, please bring me happiness. And then the second one is called The Face of Homelessness. And it's just,
Allison, do you want to explain what that was about?
yeah, so that was about dementia and just the roller coaster ride of having the opportunity to remember versus not remember, and the frustration and the challenge that surrounds that experience when one is challenged with dementia. And then the next one I wrote was The Face of Homelessness. And this, I work with the homeless as a part of an organization here in town. And that's what's inspired me to write this one. It's just 4 words. 4 words, I have no home. 4 words, I have no car. 4 words, I have no food. 4 words, I have no money. 4 words, I have no clothes. 4 words, I have no identification. 4 words, I have no birth certificate. 4 words, I have no insurance. 4 words, I can't get hired. 4 words, I can't find help. 4 words, I have no support. 4 words, who can I trust? 4 words, I pose no threat. 4 words, I am not helpless. 4 words, I am not a failure. 4 words, I didn't choose this. 4 words, I have a name. 4 words, I have a face. 4 words, I have a brain. 4 words, I'm able to work. 4 words, I want to work. 4 words, I can make change. 4 words, we see your kindness. 4 words, we see your strength. 4 words, we see your gifts. 4 words, we see your potential. 4 words, we see your vulnerability. 4 words, you deserve a home. 4 words, you deserve a chance. 4 words, we can feed you. 4 words, we can support you. 4 words, we can help you. Your 4 words are, can you see me? My 4 words, you are completely worthy. And I am looking.
That's okay. I'm next, Allison.
Susie,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I knew it earlier today.
Oh, you don't have to remember. That's okay. Okay. Being a bit of a rebel, I wrote in prose. So I took a different turn here. Who am I being? It was September 1964. I was 18 years old, and like a lot of 18-year-olds, I didn't know who I was or what I wanted. I felt completely lost and more alone than I'd ever been in my life. It didn't matter that the United States was in turmoil because of the unpopular Vietnam War, because I was in turmoil. I was frozen in fear of leaving my sheltered small town home life for Otterbein College, 100 miles away. I didn't choose Otterbein. I didn't choose to be an organ major. I just floated with the current into both because Otterbein was a small United Methodist affiliated college, and I was a Methodist. An older friend of the family went there, and the music department gave me a small scholarship after I'd auditioned after years of piano and organ lessons. So off I went, being too scared to even open the huge catalog of courses they'd sent before I stepped foot on campus. I had no one to help me choose courses that I'd actually succeed at. Although both my parents wanted to go to college, they were prevented from doing so because after high school graduation, they were both forced into jobs to help support their families of origin. So going to college was just the expected next thing in my life after high school, even though I wasn't prepared for what that meant. I remember trying to figure out who I was as an 18-year-old college student, having no clue what I was going to do with a music degree. I even pledged a sorority because they seemed to want me, even though I had nothing in common with those girls. As my freshman year ground on with a lot of tears and low grades, I changed up my style of clothing to wearing what I thought were stylish contrasting colors of navy and yellow. Made new friends in the dorm, and I started cussing a lot. I remember writing a letter to one of those friends the following summer that was filled with colorful cuss words. I was shocked that this friend told me not to write to her again, and she couldn't be my friend any longer. Her mother had read this letter and was appalled that her daughter had made friends with such a low-life person. That incident woke me up. I remember asking, who is this person inside me? Who am I being? Is this who I truly am, or am I trying to be someone else? Someone who cusses to show how cool she is. I finished college, got married, had a baby I wasn't ready for, and started experimenting with marijuana and tried acid one time. A long night filled with paranoia. I knew drugs weren't really for me, but was still in the dark as to who I really was, trying on various personas that never seemed to fit. I remember admiring a large belt buckle at a booth at a local festival that said something about hustling is the way to go through life. And then my then husband, with a shocked look on his face, said, "That's not you." Okay, who was I exactly? When I was in my early 40s, a friend and I went for fun to a famous psychic in Columbus to find out our futures. As I gave the psychic my wedding ring to hold, she looked me straight in the eyes and told me I was a liar. After inwardly denying the whole thing, grabbing my ring and running out of the room, it took me 10 years to finally see what she saw about me in that moment. I really was a liar to myself as to who I really was inside. I was being a fraudulent version of myself that I'd made up to fit who I thought others thought I should be. Staying in a marriage that had long since lost juice and fearing the unknown, it never occurred to me to ask myself, who am I being? In the middle of telling myself everything was fine. I'd completely ignored who I truly was at my core. I'd completely ignored the wisdom that flowed inside me, listening to others instead of to my inner knowing. For the last 25 years, I've been on a journey to the center of my heart to discover the truth of what's inside me, instead of looking outside me for the answers. Instead of following the desires of others for me and being blown about in the wind, as Bob Dylan sang, I'm looking at who I am being in this moment and making a conscious choice regardless of what I'm doing and who I'm with. Who am I being as a partner? Who am I being as a coach? Who am I being as a mother, a grandmother, a friend? Who am I being to make a difference in people's lives? Who am I being is a question I'm continually living with that leads me back to authenticity and how I want to show up in the world, to show me whether I'm being kind and patient or impatient and judgmental, If I listen with an open heart for an honest answer, I can see whether I'm choosing fear or love in that moment. At 76, I've discovered when I make the choice to act from love for me, as well as for others, I know who I am, and my life is always happier and easier. Thank you. And the next time I wrote more of what is in line with everybody else. So this is who am I being? It's kind of on the same wavelength here. Who am I being when my husband is irritated with me about something he's frustrated with and I pull away from him? Who am I being when I take my daily walk in my neighborhood hoping that the older gentleman we call the mayor isn't sitting outside so I don't have to stop and chat? Who am I being when I listen with an open heart to a friend who's frustrated with her nursing students who seem to be not taking their training seriously? Who am I being when I believe thoughts that I'm feeling excluded or not appreciated? Who am I being when I feel superior to someone who disagrees with me over something I feel strongly about? Who am I being when I love my husband instead of trying to fix him when he's struggling with emotional challenges? Who am I being? The good news is that being is a choice, and it's one made from fear or love, and it's always a choice I can make in every moment to choose love. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, next up is Sharon. Yeah.
I have written something called A Tale of Two Sisters in 4-word bites. You were born first. I was born second. You were a problem. You always carried on. You and Dad fought. You wouldn't back down. You would get hit. I would get quiet. You would get pummeled. Mom would rush in. I just stayed away. I took mental notes. They couldn't be trusted. You were my ally. We grew so close. I needed to live without all your drama. I moved to England. We wrote and phoned. In 76, you visited after a bad breakup. You threatened to suicide. I moved once again. 86 in New Zealand. You resented my happiness, spouse, home, and baby. You threatened to suicide. I had your number. I stayed very calm. We wrote and phoned. I moved, New York. Your business was failing. You got very depressed. 96, your usual threat. Then in late 2012, you got very sick. Was suicide the answer? As always, you didn't. In 2020, I moved, this time to Ohio, near to my daughter, near to my grandkids. Week later, you fell. I stayed in Ohio. You got home help. You still threaten suicide. It's how you deal. It's finally hit me. I cannot save you. Never could, never will. Your life is limited by health, by outlook. I'm living my life. I'm trying to grow. I'm looking for freedom. I'm looking for peace. This pattern will persist till your lungs surrender, till your celiac wins, till all bones break. The love is real. The resentment is real. The sadness is real. We talk on FaceTime just about every day. You're in New York, as you've always been. Hago lo que puedo, 4 words in Spanish to say what takes 5 English words. I'll do what I can, right to the end. Thank you. And Next is Mara.
No, Donna, I'm up
Oh,
next.
excuse me, you are correct.
Okay. Mine is entitled Four Words Describe Me. I have experienced life. I can be wise. I am a survivor. I've survived breast cancer. I've survived physical abuse. I've survived verbal abuse. I've survived sexual abuse. I am very resilient. I could be insane. I am not insane. I've made mistakes. I've learned from mistakes. I'd no moral compass. I've a moral compass. What are my strengths? I care for myself. These are the ways. I'm very creative. I'm a photographer. I love photographing birds. I enjoy photographing landscapes. I like photographing insects. I love photographing flowers. I'm an artist. I paint in watercolors. I paint in acrylics. I draw with graphite. I paint with pastels. I use colored pencils. I enjoy painting birds. I use my photos to paint many birds. I like painting dogs. I have painted rocks with multiple Disney characters. I am a writer. I have written essays. I have written poems. I'm writing a memoir in the writers group of the Transition Network. I'm a boater. I own a boat, a 1982 Sea Ray Sundancer. I'm a woman captain. Traveling is a passion. I relish traveling abroad. I traveled the United States. I appreciate trailer camping. I've gone tent camping. I've been to Asia. I've been to Europe. I've been to South America. I've been to islands. I'm a volunteer. I am chairwoman of the Transition Network. Growing membership is important. Growing participation is crucial. I'm a worship director of our small temple called Kahilat Sukat Shalom. I'm learning guitar. Joni Kalem teaches me. I play Jewish songs. I'm learning Beatles songs. I'm a good cook. I love cooking ribs, only baby back ribs. I enjoy making salads. I like cooking Thai. I enjoy practicing yoga. I do the splits. Daily practice is best at balancing our yoga on Zoom at home. I am a teacher. I loved teaching spinning. I taught body sculpting. I was a dive master. I taught fellow employees at the appeals court. I aspire to teach yoga. We rescued a dog. He's a French bulldog. His name is Ollie. He is very bullheaded. He makes me angry. He gives me joy. He makes me laugh. He is so loving. I walk him frequently. We walk 8,000 steps. There's a book club called the Longevity Mastermind. I am a member. I feel welcome there. It's important to bond with my fellow members, and I am bonding while making TTN friends. I am so resilient. I have a full life. Ian. Thank you. And now Mara Holt.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. So I wrote a poem and then prose. And the poem has my 4 words as its first line, and then every line after that is 4 words. I don't like weddings. They should be personal. Instead, they are opportunities for families to fight. Mine started in Austin, then moved to Illinois, from there to Mississippi, then back to Austin. From churches to JPs, From the courthouse, a last-minute search ending in East Austin. I could have done without the planning that involved my parents' super egos, the relentless decision-making, the homophobia and racism, and chosen East Austin from the very start. At weddings I attend, I imagine the planning and regret the pain that inevitably preceded them. I found the man I wanted to marry in graduate school at the University of Texas at Austin. We met in Spanish class. Leon was a wonderful, gentle man from Alaska. He was doing participant observation on one of the earliest unhoused populations, which would later result in a book called Down on Their Luck. We decided to marry during the summer of 1986. We didn't have any money, however, so the story of our wedding is a story of limitations, financial limitations, but also the limitations of distance. Our families lived in Alaska and Illinois, and time. We were studying for comprehensive exams. Further on in our planning, we discovered the limitations of my family's imagination about what a wedding could look like, about who would be welcome to attend. We started with the idea of having the wedding in Austin. We met with a minister at a Unitarian church. We looked at sample Unitarian vows. We tried to figure out a reception. It wasn't clear whether my parents were willing to contribute money and who in our families would be able to come. Diversity was a fact in Leon's family. His brother had custody of his 2 children whose mother was Black. His sister had married an Alaskan native from the Aleutian Islands. My best friend in Austin at that moment was a gay white man named Alfred. And Leon had been divorced years before. These are the facts that would eventually trip us up. We had to be open to all possibilities, including that half Black nieces in Alaska might meet my Mississippi mother at the wedding. My mother had to be told about the nieces, to which she replied, "How will it affect your children?" And I'm pretty sure she meant genetically. She also didn't approve of the Unitarian Church. My father wanted me to disinvite Alfred, which I refused to do, and he interpreted the refusal as my prioritizing a gay man over my own father. At each point of conflict, I was drawn away from my studies into emotional territory, and thus I eventually surrendered. I gave the wedding to my mother to solve, on the condition that she would leave me out of the drama. I was willing to give up my own intentions for peace of mind. I thought this would buy me freedom. What I didn't realize is that she was capable of endless critique, but not capable of planning a wedding. At first, the wedding was going to be in Illinois, where my parents lived. My dad was excited and said he could get his friends to come. My mother soon realized that Dad's friends would be the main attenders, as none of the rest of us had friends or family in Illinois. Mother switched the location to Mississippi, where her family lived. There was a possible church in Natchez, but the minister wouldn't marry us without Leon's divorce decree, which was long gone. Then Mother focused on the reception. The cost per plate made her nervous, so she called me to complain, so that I would help her decide not to pay for a reception, which I did expeditiously. Then I got a phone call from my Uncle Charles, my mother's brother, who asked me if I wanted the wedding at his house in the country near Fayette. I said yes with enthusiasm, until I got the call from Aunt Ruth asking me about the reception. In the meantime, Alfred had said he wanted to go to the Mississippi wedding, but my mother objected because Alfred was gay. What would Uncle Charles think, she said, while Charles' son Spur was gay, unbeknownst to his father. Spur's mom, my Aunt Ruth, said no to the reception, which I had thought could be at her house just after the wedding ceremony. Leon and I got a marriage license that gave us a span of time during which we were eligible to marry. And then on a Wednesday night, we decided to get married on Friday at the courthouse and made an appointment for late afternoon. We brought our friends Alfred and Mary Margaret McGee with us to the courthouse, only to find that everyone had left, including the JP who was supposed to marry us. There were custodians around who let us use a phone in one of the offices, and Alfred sprang to the rescue. The phone company was on strike. Directory assistance was not available. So Alfred called a friend and said, "Don't ask me any questions. Just look up JP's in the phone book and give me the phone numbers." Alfred took down at least 20 numbers while the clock was inching towards 6. One by one, they were unavailable until the last number, a place in East Austin that would marry us if we could get there by 6. We dashed madly to the East Austin address, whereupon a very nice black JP engaged us in a beautiful ceremony, which included language about taking our love back into the community and ended with, "As long as you both shall love." We had a flight to Key West early the next morning for our honeymoon, which would end in my parents' cabin in Mississippi. Our plan was to fly to Miami the next morning and then make our way to Key West, then to Fayette, Mississippi, where my family had a cabin that my father had built on a tract of forested land. The Mississippi leg of the trip was my attempt to do something that felt like family, something meaningful to me. My parents had been slow to agree to our staying in the cabin. They said they might want to be there at that particular time. It felt as if whatever was important to me from my wedding or honeymoon was simply not a priority for them, and I felt that it should be. On our third day in the cabin, my parents called. They were in a hotel in Natchez, 25 miles away. They had driven to Natchez from Illinois, and this was the first I had heard about it. Leon and I sat on chairs in their hotel room, astonished, while they explained their plan for us. Mother was not feeling well and had insisted on seeing a Mississippi doctor, and my father needed to get back to work. He pulled a plane ticket out of his front shirt pocket and handed it to Leon. It was a one-way ticket to Austin. I was to stay and take care of Mother. They presented it as a fait accompli. They had bought me the ticket without asking us first. They had made an appointment for a colonoscopy, which a doctor at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois had recommended that she get. Leon and I assumed there was something more going on that we couldn't grasp. How else would interrupting our honeymoon make any sense? My acquiescence was based on my assumption that no one would ask for such a thing if any other choice was possible. Leon reluctantly left to prepare for his impending dissertation defense. I had comprehensive exams coming up, but I stayed with Mother while she had a colonoscopy and a nervous breakdown. There were some suspicious polyps, but nothing that an Illinois doctor couldn't have taken care of. Who goes to Mississippi for medical care? My mother was a whirlpool of obsessive anxiety. In her hospital room, she needed me to adjust the thermostat every few minutes, first too hot, then too cold, and back again. She wanted me to get a nurse, get the doctor, get her lipstick from her purse. Back in the cabin, she asked for milk from a grocery store 25 miles away, then sent me back because it was the wrong brand. She asked me to make calls, run errands, wait on her hand and foot. And she was critical of my efforts. My patience running thin, I was in need of spiritual sustenance. I shared my daily meditation readings with her to help quell her urgent anxiety. I had recently joined AA, and so I tried to take her through a few of the 12 steps to encourage a state of spiritual surrender. She was a religious woman, but her faith wasn't helping her. I needed support. I wanted to go to an AA meeting, but she was against it. What would people think? She said. And I said, what people? Other alcoholics? Ultimately, I backed off, not wanting to increase her anxiety. My sister, who lived a couple of hours away in Baton Rouge, showed up for an hour and a half wearing hot pants and pink high-heeled shoes, dashing my hopes that she would take over and encourage me to go home. My mother's brothers, Charles and Jim, lived in houses on either side of the cabin with their wives, my aunts, maybe 250 feet away. They had questions. I told them what was going on with my mother. Eventually, the doctor visits were over and my father returned for my mother so I could fly home. A couple of weeks after my return to Austin, I got a phone call from my mother, who was back in Illinois. She had gotten word that I had talked to my uncles about her in Mississippi, and she was livid. I was livid in return. Her expectations of me were incomprehensible. I wanted her gratitude, maybe even an apology, not angry accusations that I had broken invisible no-talk rules. I avoided her for months after that. In imagining a larger context of this honeymoon, I wonder what it looked like from their perspectives. My dad was trying to manage my mother, who routinely had him drive to Mississippi for a doctor visit. But what was going on with her? Was she somehow upset that I was getting married? Did she believe that she was seriously ill? Or was she merely accustomed to getting her way and she saw me as available, my plans as dispensable? And my plans were indeed dispensable compared to what came next, my father's death. That's it. Thank you.
To be continued, right, Mara?
Right.
Well, you can see in the writers group that we let it all hang out. And and you all, we're going to give you some time to write. But I wondered if anybody had any questions for anybody, any of the readers, before we give some time for you to write.
No, I just think it would make a great anthology called You Can't Make This Stuff Up. Stories, you guys. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
You.
I have a question. When you are able to put these feelings on paper, what does that do for you in really dealing with the reality with those things?
Anybody want to take that?
For me, it's therapeutic. I never did answer my ex, but it was so therapeutic to just put that down on paper and say, here's what I think, you know. So, it's everything that you've ever read about journaling, but we do it and get together once a month and share what we wrote. So, and as journaling is therapeutic, so is writing, whether we write the forward things or the other things. But you're in the writers group, Mary, so what does it do for you?
Sometimes it gets me criticism when I share it with family members and I've written something about it. I know I was writing about my mom at one point and read it to my daughter, and she said, Grandma would hate it that you said anything about that. And so, you know, it's part of that shame kind of thing where it's the no talk rule. Now, is it changing? Or, I mean, for me, with that particular instance, it didn't change from historic things, responses.
Thanks for the tip, Mary. I will not read this to any family members.
That's a good idea.
No, Mara.
Hey, Mara, I think you should read it to somebody from Netflix. I think I think this is just the kind of thing they'd be interested in.
Yeah.
And there's a follow-up called The Honeymoon, right?
Yeah.
Well, I read The Honeymoon. I put
Yeah,
them together.
she didn't read the death, though. You haven't,
The funerals.
the funeral.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Oh, so you did read The Honeymoon. Okay,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
kind of ran together. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to do it fast.
Well, Mara, the only thing I could say was that is definitely not a Hallmark movie. I kept thinking,
There's no happy ending there.
yeah, as you were telling this, I kept thinking, oh my God, this can't possibly be happening to one person in a lifetime.
What I discovered in writing it is that it was funnier than
Yeah.
I had realized when I experienced it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's part of the beauty of the whole process is the fact that we are able to write authentically and share authentically, see humor in things that maybe weren't humorous to us as they were happening. And also, yeah, get that therapeutic opportunity to really process through the different events of our lives and the things that are painful. And, you know, it is one of the questions that we ask one another oftentimes is, did you share this with that family member? And to Mary's point, you know, sometimes we feel comfortable sharing depending upon who the family member is, and other times we may not feel comfortable doing so, but there's still a real benefit to each of us for writing and sharing with this group.
Right, and we've been writing pieces of our memoirs, whether we publish them or not, who knows? But that's really, really valuable to put down some of these things that have happened in our families or in our lives. And it's been a really great process. Yeah, Leslie?
This question's for Allison. The one that you wrote on the dementia, do you think that someone who is in that stage of dementia where they painfully are aware that things are going and can't really do anything about it, do you think that they would benefit from hearing that piece? Or would it be more upsetting?
It's a great question. And it was written about a family member who has this illness, and I'm helping this family member, and the answer would be, I don't know. I think the complexity of the disease is such that on any given day, it could strike somebody who is challenged in that way differently.
Yeah, okay.
One day where, you know, where they're having a good day, it may resonate differently than on a day where they're, you know, really challenged and really feeling like everything is a hardship.
Mhm.
And so I don't know that there's any way to know.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I am finding, doing elder care work and then now experiencing it in my own family, is just what a roller coaster ride of emotions it is for the person that is challenged in this way. And for all of those loved ones who are a part of that journey
Mhm.
and are in the space of not knowing from day to day what life is going to look like.
Yeah. Okay, I understand. Yeah. Thank you.
I would say, having been through this with my parents who died at 92 and 94, and the thing that they wouldn't get it. Maybe the caregivers would be able to grow from it.
Mhm.
But and of course it has a continuum of people realizing something's wrong and then not realizing anything is wrong. So, but I think caregivers could learn from it.
Mary, to your point, I think it depends on where you are in the progression of the disease.
Yeah.
Because as I'm watching it, what I'm learning is that there is a window of time where you are realizing that these things are happening to you, and you're not yet progressed to a point where this wouldn't resonate. But I definitely agree with you that there becomes a stage where it definitely is valuable to a caregiver, but maybe not to the person who's actually having the challenges of the disease.
It also might be worthy of the relatives that are, or other people who are around. Because my sister went through that, and it took my special ed niece to explain to people that the communication is not being received, nor can it go out. And, you know, people are interpreting their eyes, their what they want, all these other things. And with that person themselves, there isn't anything that they are communicating or letting out, because nothing, that those brain pieces are no longer there.
And
Yes.
So if we could,
very humorous too. And I know when my mother died and my daughter and I had my dad between us, and he said to me, "Who is that woman in there?" Well, my daughter and I had to giggle because it was just really sort of comical. So I think if you can still do some laughing and stuff, because it's unusual.
so I hope everybody has some paper, or maybe they could use the cell phone notes because it's your turn to write. How about that? Here are some ideas that maybe I'm sure listening to our pieces, you got some ideas, but here are some other kind of ideas where you're forewords, and you can write it as prose any way you want it. You can do, well, you heard some good examples. Overcoming a great loss. My happiest moment was. My advice to you. Things I really love. People who inspire me. Thoughts on aging gracefully. Most wonderful childhood memory. Most cherished Christmas moments. And just whatever comes to you. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes to write. And is everybody willing to do this? Would you like to do this? I don't want to force anybody.
What I'd like to do is see your list again. Because there were some very interesting things, but I didn't write anything down.
Okay, why don't I read them again? Overcoming a great loss. Actually, Mary, this might be your opportunity to write what you were going to write, for this program.
And I support that.
My happiest moment was. My advice to you. Things I really love. People who inspire me. Thoughts on aging gracefully. Most wonderful childhood memory. Most cherished Christmas moments. I remember when. Does that give everybody some idea about 4 words?
And we're supposed to come up with the 4 words then too, correct?
Yeah, however you want to write it. No rules. All right, I'll give you 10 minutes and we'll, yeah, we can write too, Sharon. Yeah. And then I'll call you back, and if you'd like to read your piece, we aren't gonna, force you to read it, but we'd love to hear your pieces. Yes, and our writers group can write as well. You have about a minute to finish up. Okay, if we could all come back. And who would like to read theirs? Ah, Jeanette.
Okay, it's really hard to do 4 words, it really is. And this is about today. Blue Monday. Petey, you're sick. I wanted to exercise. I have to go to the vet. I am being selfish. I am thinking me. I will be grateful. The sun is shining. I did attend line dancing. Petey will be better. Where is my TTN email? Tomorrow is another day. I am so grateful. Yes.
Thank you, Jeanette. And Leslie?
Okay, couldn't get it to unmute. All right, I called mine 3 or 4 words. I hate COVID. I hate COVID testing. I hate Kroger. I hate Kroger online. I hate technology. I hate Kroger technology. I love TTN. I love Care Circle. I hate distracted driving. I love distracted resting. Many, many texts while I lay resting, burning up with fever. Many, many texts. I love distracted resting and the many texts to keep me company in my isolation.
Thank you. I'm glad you're better. Yeah, Nancy?
Well, I chose this topic before your long list of ideas. And I was thinking about the time 3 or 4 years ago that I discovered a feral litter of kittens. And so the mother was in the process of moving these cats because a 5th kitten was found on his own. So I was just thinking about from the perspective of one of the cats in 4-word sentences. I am so scared. All these loud noises. Just got moved again. A strange new place. Where am I now? Just heard a voice. Someone calling to me. Too scared to move. A man just arrived, held me up high, placed in a cage, off to a home, now showered with love.
They're wonderful. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah. Who else would like to share? Ah, Maureen.
So I did a childhood memory, and I didn't. The 4 words were kind of hard for me, so maybe there's more like 5 or 3, whatever. But I remember the cabin in the woods. The path was across the street. It was made from sticks and branches. We spent our time there many summer days. We walked past the stream that dried in the summer, the smell of the blueberries, waiting for them to ripen, picking and eating all day. Walking along the railroad tracks that led out of town, finding the bridge to the junkyard, listening to the trains that came twice a day. The rails clicked before we heard the engine, so we knew to get out of the way. Standing on the path near the tracks as the train rumbled by. Climbing the sand dunes across the tracks. She climbed the pole next to the railroad tracks to see the bird's nest. She sat on the bar across the top of the pole. She asked me, "Is it safe to touch the wires?" I thought before answering. I was 10 years old.
Yeah, these are all wonderful. Thank you. Anybody else? Pat.
Thoughts on aging gracefully. Is aging gracefully possible? I wonder about this. Like, what is aging and what is gracefully? I'm really not sure. Does no filter still apply? Can I blur to anything? Or isn't that graceful? Can I wear tights, even if they're tight? Let myself go completely? Meaning what, I wonder? Do contractions still count as only 4 words?
Thank you. Sandy, and then Brenda.
Pat and I were on the same wavelength. Mine is aging gracefully. When did I get these wrinkles? I remember when I was in the musical I Do, I had to paint them on. When did I gain this weight? I remember having to drink milkshakes because my weight had reached 117. When did my hair start thinning? It used to take all day for my hair to dry in the long braid that was fashionable at the time. Oh, well, at least I am aging and experiencing and loving and writing and walking and playing with my doodles and my granddaughter, because I am aging gracefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda?
And you said to write whatever comes to mind. So I'm reeling from the shooting in Colorado. So another attack on queers. How many must die? We live in fear. My daughter is transgender. Her mother is gay. Please make it stop. Let us live peacefully. We aren't hurting anyone, but you're hurting us in so many ways. Your religion is justification. Please just stop it. Yesterday was Trans Remembrance. So many are gone. Maybe we should try getting to know people. Maybe then it would stop. And I know that was 5 in the last one, but.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. Thank you.
Very nice.
Yeah. Anybody else before we close this part?
I can read mine.
Okay.
My happiest moment. I was 40 something. I returned to college. Graduation day was here. I graduated with honors. Summa cum laude. Wow. I was the first in my family to graduate from a college. The smile was genuine. My pride was bursting. The journey was long and sometimes very agonizing. Many moments of revelation. I learned about myself, I grew from inside. I came out better than when I entered. College was life-changing. It was for myself. It grew my confidence.
Mm. Okay. Thank you. Now we're going to turn it over to Mara and Pat, who are going to tell us about their civil rights trip.
Well, what we're going to do is show a video that Jenny Kiefer made describing the trip. And then Pat and I will say a few words and answer any questions you have.
Okay, here goes. Okay, looks like I have to load it again. So just give me a minute here.
While we're waiting, I just wanted to say, everyone who read your pieces were fabulous. They were so moving, every single one of them. So, and I'm speaking for myself, but I'm sure the rest of the group feels the same. So, anyone can write, obviously, you know, in 4 words. And I think it makes it so much easier to just say 4 words. You don't have to make it a elaborate essay or whatever, like Pat's essays or Jeanette's book. But this is all just my opinion, but I'm trying in a very roundabout way to say again that I loved your pieces. So thank you. It really meant a lot.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna try this again. Got to share. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
All right. Yeah, maybe I have to. There. I will share the screen. Okay, now let's see if it works.
There it is.
If you can, and let me know if you can hear it too.
Hi, I'm Jenny Kiefer, and I'm happy to be able to present to you tonight the TTN Civil Rights Trip, which occurred
Can you make it full screen?
through the 30th this year. We had 24 registered women on the trip from 10 different chapters. And there we all are there. This was the trip that we took. We spent a few days in Atlanta, Montgomery, Selma, and Birmingham. This was a Rhodes Scholar trip. And these are the different places that we went to. The first stop here is the state capitol in Georgia. And I selected these couple of pictures. There were many, many, many things to see in the Georgia Capitol. But I selected these pictures because I found it pretty interesting that for the first time in state history, portraits of prominent Black Georgians were hung in the state capitol. And this was because of Governor Carter, who was in office from 71 to 75. he put together an 8-member advisory committee, including 3 Black professors, to select candidates for this honor. The governor was backing the project because Black children and other Blacks who visit the state capitol ought to be able to see something they are proud to identify with. So Martin Luther King was one of those people whose portraits was displayed in the Capitol building. Prior to that, the Capitol was chock full of Confederate Civil War artifacts, statues, marble busts, plaques, oil paintings from generals, majors, naval commanders, Confederate senators, along with a few men who were involved in the forced removal of Cherokee Indians from the state in the Trail of Tears. So this was sort of a momentous thing that for the first time, Blacks were represented in the Capitol building. I also put Lester Maddox up here. Some of you might remember his name. He was the governor prior to Jimmy Carter. He was a segregationist and a defender of the lost Southern cause. And he opposed including Dr. King in the Capitol gallery, saying King did a disservice to the country, more to advance communism than Americanism. I'm sure there's some Blacks who ought to be up there, but he's not one of them. He led this country to anarchy, riots, police deaths, a general disservice. Maddox denied King a lying in state in the Capitol, and he had guards at the Capitol when the funeral passed by. So you see in that picture of him, the governors got to choose how they would be represented in the pictures. And so Maddox's picture is an example. He chose to wear a seersucker suit so he could depict his unconventionality. He had a picture of his wife because she was not allowed to be in the painting. In the state seal, he changed it to add a bicycle because he liked to bike. And he had a fish, you can see right under his elbow, that was wrapped in the Atlantic Constitution paper to reflect his total disdain for the newspaper. This is a picture of all of us eating. We were able to get together with members from the Atlanta chapter, and that was a really fun side benefit. We had a great meal at this fabulous Italian restaurant called Maggiano's. Here in Atlanta, we went to the home of Martin Luther King, and we sat on his porch. And we realized how close everything was in that community, the church, his house. Across the street are what they call row houses. And the double shotgun row houses, which are 4 identical hip-roofed houses located on Auburn Avenue, were built in 1905 for mill workers. The houses got the name shotgun because a bullet could theoretically enter and leave the house through the perfectly aligned doorways. The Martin Luther King Jr. Historic District takes up several blocks in the Sweet Auburn center of Black Atlanta, and it was established in 1974 and encompasses the environment that Martin Luther King grew up in from his birth in 1929 until he left Atlanta. So we had an interesting tour of the National Monument for Civil and Human Rights. There were lots of artifacts and original writings and stories about King. The National Center of Civil and Human Rights was one of our stops in Atlanta. There were lots of fascinating and compelling displays. This was the one that I found most impactful. You sat at a simulated lunch counter and you put on these headphones and you were able to actually hear and feel what it would feel like to be at that counter. There were angry voices behind you, breathing in your ear, banging and kicking your stool, threatening you right in your ear, breaking glass. And it was just an incredible experience to see what that felt like. And you realized how scary it was and how brave it were. We had lots of interesting speakers on this trip, including a wonderful presentation about the impact that photojournalists had on the movement. If their cameras had not caught the horrific images the country would probably not have been galvanized around these issues the way that they were. Much like the impact of phone cameras during George Floyd's murder and other Black murders. Nasir Muhammad, the guy up in the top left, was a local guy, and he gave us a really colorful tour, basically giving us like the real scoop. Steve Davis, a history professor, had two pretty interesting points that he made in his talk. One of them was the fact that Jim Crow, that system, actually was born in the North. While slavery was so clearly defined, the more challenging issue was actually whether and how you included and integrated Blacks into your community. He also did an interesting talk about the evolution of the state flag and the symbolic importance. Confederate flags, the battle flags, the US flag. It was pretty interesting. And then Rosa Parks came to visit us. In Montgomery, we visited the Rosa Parks Museum to learn the dramatic story of the bus boycott, and we visited the Civil Rights Monument and the Dexter Avenue Memorial Baptist Church, where King was a pastor from 1954 to 1960. This church was the backbone of the 1955 to 56 Montgomery bus boycott. King had newly arrived and he was asked to get involved. The bus boycott, which some of you may have heard of, I know I heard of it, but it wasn't until I really heard the depth and the length and the impact of that boycott. It ran from December 5th, 1955 to December 20th, 1956, so over a year. Blacks would get on the bus at the front of the bus to pay, then they would have to get off and walk to the entrance midway back and then go sit in the back of the bus. And if there were a lot of whites on the bus, they would have to get up from their seats and give them to the white passengers. Sometimes the drivers would take off before they had a chance to get back on the bus. So Rosa Parks famously was the person who refused to give up her seat, but she wasn't the first one to take that stand. She was just the right person to be the poster child. There was actually others. There was a 15-year-old girl, for instance, who resisted 9 months earlier, but she was pregnant and it wasn't a good optic. So the strike lasted 13 months until the Supreme Court ruled that bus desegregation was unconstitutional. So Rosa Parks was arrested December 1st, and remarkably, another woman, Joanne Robinson of the Women's Political Council, distributed thousands of flyers to begin a boycott just a few days later on December 5th, which was pretty impressive. So during that time for that year, Blacks drove other Blacks to work to cripple the buses. And the Blacks made up 75% of the riders. So they used any kind of vehicle they could, taxis, funeral cars, they walked. So it was pretty impressive. And of course, there was a backlash. Snipers shot into the buses, Black churches were bombed, Martin Luther King's home was bombed. So we went into this church and sat on the very benches that the protesters sat on. And you really could get a feel for what it might have been like. The churches were where people could gather, where Black people could gather, and where they felt fairly safe. So this woman, Wanda, quite a colorful person, told us stories about the experiences in the church. I think there was one story she talked about when King was getting ready to preach in this church, and he got a call about the 16th Street church bombing in Birmingham that killed 4 little girls. And he came out into the church and he looked up at the ceiling and he cried out, Lord, what's next? And he started to cry. So it was very dramatic hearing those stories. Wanda also conveyed to us how important freedom songs were. They helped lift the spirits of the Black people and helped create unity. And while we were there, we really could feel all of this. I'm somehow having trouble advancing the slides. There we go. Of course, lots of great food in a variety of settings, outside, inside. Odessa's was a home where we had an amazing Southern meal. So the eating, of course, was bountiful and Southern. Continuing on in Montgomery, we visited the National Legacy Museum and then the memorial. And this was a result of a lot of work by Brian Stevenson, his vision and his work with the Racial Justice Initiative. It was a pretty powerful experience. And here tribute is paid to the thousands of Blacks who were tortured and lynched. They're jars of soil that are collected from the various sites of the lynchings in the various counties in the state. The Equal Justice Initiative believes that it's really important to confront the American history of racial terror lynching. They have a community remembrance project. It's part of their campaign to recognize the victims of lynching by collecting this soil, erecting historical markers, and creating this national memorial that acknowledges those horrors. The memorial structure on the center of the site is constructed of 800 6-foot steel monuments, one for each county in the United States where racial terror lynching took place. And the names of the lynching victims are engraved on the columns. Oops, going the wrong way. No, I'm having this difficulty moving this forward. These are just a sampling of the many plaques on the wall that explain why these people were lynched. And as you can see, pretty crazy stuff. So in visiting Montgomery, we took a walk around the city to get a lay of the land. And the thing about Montgomery is that it was a perfect location for the slave trade. There was a river, which you can see in the upper left-hand picture, where slaves would arrive by boat and then would walk in chains up the street into the town. There was also a railroad right there where they could be commuted. And they were walked in chains up the street and into the center of town to the slave auction site, which is where that beautiful fountain is right now. But that was the site of the auction. They would also have warehouses where they were held temporarily until the auctions could be held. And you can imagine the conditions in those warehouses. Here we are with Rosa Parks, who there's memorials and plaques and things all over Montgomery. We moved on from there to Selma. Selma is a community of 17,000 people. That's as of 2021, 83% Black. And there's a lot of poverty there. As we drove around, we could see a lot of broken down buildings, was not in terribly good shape. We had a talk by Diane Harris, who is what they call a foot soldier. And she's someone who was part of the movement back in the 60s. And she told us the story of being a young girl, I think she was 15 years old, with her brother wanting to go on the march from Selma to Montgomery. Her mom believed in the effort, but parents who chose to leave work and be part of the protest lost their jobs immediately. So the mom said, you know, you can go, but you're in charge of your brother, keep an eye on him. And so she took her brother, and she was pretty far in the back of the line as they headed up this bridge. She describes hearing the rumble, seeing the commotion, and then people starting to run toward her, bloodied and panicked. and smelling the tear gas that drifted back. And she wound up running away, terrified, hearing the screams of the people. So the march began. John Lewis was part of that march. They walked up this bridge, and when they got to the top of the bridge, they looked down and saw a sea of blue troopers waiting for them. And so the movement believed in nonviolent protests, and this was pretty dramatic because the contrast between the anger and rage of the white people beating on Black people who were not fighting back at all created a pretty horrific optic. But very amazing to imagine being hit and beaten and not responding. So they bravely walked right towards those troopers, stood there, and the troopers attacked them. And that was famously called Bloody Sunday. After that, they did successfully complete that march in another attempt, walking from Selma to Montgomery, which was 54 miles and took a few days. Here's our Boston contingent. And we actually walked the bridge, and it was an incredibly moving experience to be on that bridge, see what it looked like from the top of the bridge, imagining the view looking down and seeing the state troopers waiting for you. The Freedom Riders. I had heard of the Freedom Riders, but I had no idea the bravery and the determination of both the Blacks and the whites. So a couple of buses set off with a goal of testing the Supreme Court decision about integrating the bus stations. And they're pretty horrific when you looked at the separation, when you went into those bus stations and saw the white waiting rooms and then the Black waiting rooms, which were at the back, and that you'd have to travel through a separate dirty subway kind of entrance. Restrooms for the Blacks were often locked, pretty horrific conditions. And so these basically college kids decided that they were going to do this bus trip to try to get to New Orleans, and along the way test out whether they could actually enter these waiting rooms. And so it was comprised of a mixed group there were 7 Blacks and 6 whites, again in their teens and in their 20s, that made this journey. And the stories, the details about these stories would just take your breath away. In one of the stories, one of the first buses, as you can see in the upper right, was surrounded by angry white mob who were banging on the windows, throwing rocks, screaming at them, and finally broke a window and threw basically a little firebomb into the bus. They held the doors shut and were shouting that they wanted to burn the niggers inside. The bus then exploded, and with the explosion, it frightened the white mob, who ran away, and the passengers were able to escape the bus. So hearing these stories and knowing that as the word spread of these horrific situations, more buses would head off to complete this journey. In one story, the governor of Alabama agreed to provide safe transport, but he lied. And as the bus came into Alabama, they did not have that protection. And he basically said that the troops would be there, but he gave them 15 minutes of time to let the white mob have at the passengers before the troopers would intervene. And so a lot of damage was done. You can see this person under May, who was very badly beaten by the mob, who had chains and pitchforks and pipes. And after 15 minutes, the state troopers shot their guns and said, okay, you've had enough fun now. So that was what it was like. And again, it just gave you a sense of awe about this nonviolent resistance of someone punching somebody in the face and they're not hitting back. So these were just some thoughts and reflections during this trip. I was really struck by how different things were and yet how very much the same. So you would see in these various museums and exhibits things like I'm wondering if you could mute that, Cheryl, maybe. How it's illegal to have food or water in voter lines. Sounds pretty familiar. Closing of polls to make it harder to vote. Voter intimidation. Again, how incredibly brave they all were. The Blacks who knew well what the risks were, but they stood up anyway. And the parents who watched their children join in these protests when they knew they could be seriously injured, like the parents of the college-age freedom riders. The white allies and supporters, photographers, people who would join in these marches and rides. And famously, Viola, up in the top right, Liuzzo, who was 39, white mother of 5, came from Detroit, and she came to help. So she wound up driving people from Montgomery back to Selma. And as she was doing that, driving a Black man back to Selma, she was attacked and shot. The young children who did the Children's March, and dogs were set on them and fire hoses turned on them. And the fire hoses had such intense pressure that they were skidding down the street under the pressure of those hoses. So again, the concept of nonviolent protest, brilliant but horrifying. The image of angry white people beating on them while they're standing there peacefully is a pretty powerful image, but it's pretty hard to imagine doing that. The amount of fear, anger, hatred, and brutality that we saw was pretty shocking. Some of the things that surprised us, that Jim Crow practices flourished first in the North, because we always tend to think of it as the Southern thing. The Freedom Riders, the details of the determination and the passion, the courage that they showed. And then the role of churches as a safe haven. There are hundreds of churches in the South, and how the freedom songs were so important to them to raise their spirit and to inspire them, mobilize them, give voice to the movement, and give them a sense of unity. So it was all pretty powerful stuff. I liked this quote from Martin Luther King. And then we had a wonderful bonus part to the trip. This was the biggest parade I had ever seen. A few of us went out for a walk early in the morning, and the parade bands were practicing and setting up. And pretty much every street block, we would see lines, huge numbers of different bands. It was enormous. It was in anticipation of the Alabama State versus Alabama A&M football game. They were mostly all Black bands and performers, and there were dozens of them. You could just look across a block and see another hunk of the parade going by. And so there was a lot of representation of the tradition of Black band dancing. And this style originated in the 1940s with a blending of early traditions of military music and minstrel shows with a performance repertoire based on popular songs. So it's kind of known for its high energy showmanship and high stepping. And it was so much fun to watch. It was just a fantastic experience. You can see the cheering going on, very acrobatic, lots and lots of girls from all ages that were dressed in stunning little outfits, tons of them. And then we had the Queen and her entourage. Thought that was pretty impressive. Lots of that. this parade went on for a really long time. It was pretty amazing. And it was just a huge surprise and a fun part of the trip. So in closing, I would say that it was such a wonderful experience that we've decided to do it again. And so there will be another TTN civil rights trip running November 12th to 19th. In order to have a private TTN group, we need 18 to 24 women. We are hoping and expecting that it would be another cross-chapter experience, which was an absolutely wonderful benefit of this trip, was sharing and experiences with other women. And that's it. If I can find the screen, stop share. There we are. Okay.
Okay, Susie, stop it here.
Any questions?
Thank you. Okay, so I'll say a few words about my experience, and then I'll hand it over to Pat, after which we can answer your questions. Before I went on the trip, I was nervous. I wondered if I would be physically strong enough to do well on such a trip. I wondered what a tour would be like. Would I be hatching escape plots? Would I be able to maintain emotional balance? Or would the pace of a full itinerary keep me from self-care, from good nutrition? Would I gain 10 pounds? After the trip, I can say that none of my fears were realized. My physical strength was sufficient. The bus had a number of gradual steps that kept me from having to leap down or up. There wasn't as much walking as advertised, but there was more standing. I brought with me a small folding chair, which was a lifesaver. Those who had physical problems were taken care of, and I didn't have to figure anything out for the first time in a long time. Denise Swain took care of all the details, all of our needs, impeccably. She even invited us to discuss with her any questions we had about race, that she would be happy to share her own life experiences. The food was fantastic, and I gained only 2 pounds. I also had a wonderful time getting to know TTN women, some of which I had known from Zooms. It was a great group of people to travel with. And I'll turn it over to you, Pat.
Well, Nora and I flew down together and came back together, which was a treat because we hadn't really had a chance to visit that much. And that added to the trip. I will say it was a very emotional trip. I've been on a lot of Red Scholar tours. And if you have, they're packed full of information by local experts, people who were there at the time and so forth. This one, because there was an emotional component also, was just very striking. I was struck by how the museums brought things back to life. I'll just give a couple of examples. Jenny mentioned the lunch counter. We also went into the Legacy Museum, in which when you walk in, you feel like you're walking into the ocean. These waves are reaching out to you. And I felt like I was about to step into a slave ship and be ripped away from my home, which I think was the point. And then we got in there, and there were some cells where a slave would actually be talking with you. I think it was automatic when your body heat got up to the edge of the slave's quarters. So we had women saying, "Where are my children?" and the kids looking for their mothers. It was very emotional. I could go on and on about that aspect of it. Beyond that, just meeting other TTN women from around the country who were interested in the same thing was amazing. These women were great. They were from all over Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York, and probably leaving a lot out. But we really had a chance to visit with each other and get to know each other too. So it's a trip I'd recommend, and we can answer questions if you have any. In case you're wondering, some of us, I would say most of the people on this trip had either attended Unpacking Whiteness or facilitated it. So there was some baseline information, but it wasn't required. And you didn't have to be a TTN member to participate. So you could come and bring a friend if you wanted to, who had a similar interest. That I thought was a neat feature. And the women, like all TTN women, had had such interesting lives and were doing such interesting things. One's making jewelry. I've got to order some of her earrings. You know, people had had different careers. They were very interested in figuring out how they could make a contribution to the civil rights movement. And we'll probably see some of them again in the new course that'll be coming out next year on allyship as well. Jenny, I should just say she's amazing. She's the most organized person I've ever met. And she's got the course organized. She had the tour organized. Everything went super smoothly.
Thank you, Pat. Jenny said that there are 18 people signed up, but there's still, you know, they take people up to 24. Plus, if you find yourself interested and go to sign up, and you'll be put on a waiting list for any reason, get on the waiting list, because 6 people dropped out, and that's how I got into this trip. I didn't sign up initially. It was a blast. It was a girls' trip.
And it was a private tour, which was really a plus. And almost everybody we met with from outside said, wow, it's so unusual just to have women on a Rhodes Scholar trip. But I really liked it.
Many of the tour guides were women, and they would just get this gleam in their eye when they realized that there was no men. They didn't, you know, it was just us.
Any other questions or observations?
Well, I do have a question. When you went to that bridge, I believe it was in Selma, and you walked up, and then you could see the armed guards or whatever, the patrol down below. Was it like underneath the bridge or on either end of the bridge?
There weren't armed guards for us. There were armed guards for the original people who walked over the bridge.
Okay.
What I hadn't realized when we talked with the foot soldier, she had kind of lagged behind the crowd because she was trying, I guess, to stay safe. And then when people were attacked, they turned around and started running. And that's when she realized, you know, this is not good and we got to get out of here. I could really feel what it would be like to ask your mom, you know, can I go and take my brother and feel so responsible for keeping him safe? And she did it and lived to tell about it, but she saw some rough stuff while she was there as a young girl.
Maybe you could tell people how to sign up, because I know, didn't we get an email about it? But maybe where they can sign up.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Pat, you start.
I was just going to say, I think that Jenny's email has a link in it. We can, anybody who's interested, Maura and I can send it to you.
Absolutely. And also I went to the TTN website, and the homepage for TTN website, if you scroll to the bottom, there are like 3 or 4 events mentioned, and one of them is the next civil rights tour. And if you click on that, you get lots of information and you can sign up. But if you're thinking it and you're just trying to mull over it and or anything like I was before I went, like, oh no, I'm too old for this. This is too much. I won't have control. If you just want to think about, talk about it, then please call Pat or me and we'll talk.
I have a question for Pat and Mara both. I was in Atlanta in this early 60s, 60, 61, and felt that I had never seen anything like it before. Was this the second time you'd been in the area, or was this the first time you had gone and heard the history, saw the pictures and all that sort of thing?
I was born in Atlanta and lived there till I was 16.
Well, you saw it all then.
No, when I was 12, I took a bus downtown and watched the marchers. I saw there were Blacks in the lunch counter area where my friend and I were. We went down to get hot dogs. Everything was segregated, but they served us. I mean, I had firsthand experience. That museum in Atlanta is just so informative, and it has expanded into current times, talking about sex slavery, autocrats from around the world who are cruel to people. It's become modern. It's kept up with the times, so it's a great thing to learn. Atlanta's a huge city. It's a wonderful place. Too big for me now, but it's changed a lot over the years.
Well, I remember seeing the shock of the colored drinking fountains in bathrooms and all that stuff. I had no idea what that was like. And I think I was just wondering if it really could grasp what it really was like.
They even have TV broadcasts from that era where you can watch local newsmen reporting the news, and you can see exactly what was going on and what it felt like to hear those newscasts. I'm sorry, Maura, I talked and talked.
No, that's okay. Yeah, it was an immersion experience, so that you kept hearing similar stuff over and over to where you just felt like a part of it. And on the bus, they would play PBS videos about the thing we were about to see. It was amazing.
They played the movie Freedom Ride, and I really had the feeling that when I got off that bus, somebody might be conking me over the head with a bat. And it felt that real.
I was just really struck with where would our democracy be if these vulnerable people, very young people, hadn't just taken it upon themselves to integrate the South on their own. It was just, this is the kind of courage we need now. This is, it's an amazing thing to be a part of. And we felt like we were a part of it. And we were treated so well by all of the very knowledgeable people of color who were our tour guides. It was just phenomenal. But thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long night, and I really appreciate your sticking through to hear Jenny's presentation.
Thanks for sharing it with us.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Mara and
much.
Pat, for sharing that. That had to have been quite an experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you to the writers and the guests who wrote and attended and enjoyed everything. We love to see you here. Thanks for coming. and sign up for the next event. Any other announcements, Roberta?
Yes, for anyone that hasn't registered, TTN has an event on Monday, December 5th, called Thrive, Healing Through Writing, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. It is $10 for members. I'm not sure why, but I did sign up. So, and I saw that Donna signed up also, but if anyone else is interested, go to the TTN website calendar and sign up.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Well, we hope you have a wonderful holiday and a nice Thanksgiving. Be safe and happy and healthy. And we hope to see you next month at our in-person holiday event. First time in 3 years.
I have a
Oh,
question.
sure.
you-
Mary?
Hi. Is there a gift exchange at the
No.
holiday?
No,
okay.
we're not doing a gift exchange, just the charity, if you want to give to a charity.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope y'all can make it.
Yeah, well, thank you again for coming and for sticking through everything. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a great program. Thank you.
Yep,
Yeah.
great program,
Yeah.
very nice.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yep,
Thank
bye.
you.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Bye. Ah, here we are.
Yeah. All right,
All right, you could stop recording, I guess.
I did. Yes, to the cloud.